substance lockdowns. I want to talk to you now about when it started thinking about the budget and how it was going to affect the city.
Well, we start our budget process very early. Consider this, the budget usually starts July 1 of every year. We submit our budget in May. That means before the coronavirus, we were already working on our budget. But then we got thrown a curveball with the coronavirus. When you had the economy shut down and businesses were closed, we realized that as a city, we're heavily dependent on sales taxes. If you consider the fact that people stopped, stores closed, so an employees were off, so they weren't paying occupational taxes. The customer couldn't come in, so the city wasn't receiving sales taxes. We weren't having events in our city, so the city wasn't receiving lodging taxes. And I got many other examples of the decrease in taxes we were receiving. All of that started in March, and we had to pause on submitting a proposed budget in May that would have started in July, because we didn't know what was going to happen in March and April and May and June, etc. Now we fast forward, we presented our budget back in August, a couple months ago, and we realized we were facing a significant budget deficit due to the loss of collecting taxes.
Okay, and what Debbie said, what was your main goals and objectives behind the budget?
The main goals and objectives are the main thing in focus of any municipal government is public safety and public infrastructure. It's no one else's job to provide police, fire, paramedic. It's no one else's job to pave streets, sidewalks, curbs, lights, etc. So we are responsible for public safety and public infrastructure. Therefore, I had to continue to make that the priority. Everything else became secondary because we didn't have the taxes as it relates to the amount of money the city collected that we had last year.
All right, and with this budget, in past years, the budget process has been pretty easy. You present it to the council, get passed, you may have a little differences, but this year we just got, because of COVID-19, and it just got a little bit more contentious. And everybody, what was some of the biggest misconceptions and misinformation about the budget? And the number I saw a lot was this 63 million. And can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, well, that number was real. Listen, there's nothing wrong with contention. We are a democratic process. Everybody's not going to agree. But think about this. That budget pretty much passed intact. 6 out of 9 passed a budget and didn't change anything. The truth is because everything was already cut, right? These are good people on the council. We had to make tough decisions. But there was nothing else additional to cut. We cut salaries in the form of, we didn't cut salaries. We took away paid vacation days. We took away cost of living adjustment. We took away merit pay and longevity pay. I decreased my pay. We decreased every department's budget. We took away vacant positions. We furloughed some employees. No one wants to furlough anybody. By the way, we're doing everything we can to be on the creative solutions end of this. Find some of our city assets and find a way to sell them so we can net some cash and bring our employees back. We're doing everything we can to do that right now. But nothing wrong with contention, because there was tough, unpopular, hard decisions we had to make in order to solve for a $63 million budget shortfall.
So when I saw in the news, and then, I guess I want you to speak on when people's like, well, the mayor's laying off people at the library, the mayor's laying off these. What was your thoughts when you saw that, all that was going on during that time?
So I want to explain, there's a fundamental difference between a furlough and a termination. No one was laid off. Layoff is being fired. None of our employees have been fired. Our full-time employees and some of our part-time employees have been furloughed. They still have their access to the health benefits. They're still on our payroll. They still have first dibs to get their job back as soon as our finances are better. If you were fired, you would totally be out of the system. You couldn't have access to your benefits, and you would have to start the whole process of applying for your job over. So none of that exists. But that's the first thing I wanted to share. It's a full difference between furlough and termination. Second thing I wanted to share is that, the physical locations, the ability for you as a citizen to walk into a library, you have not been able to do that since February. They've been closed since March. April, May, June, July, August, September. And they would have been closed even if the budget was not changed because of the coronavirus. Most of these buildings are small. You don't have the room to social distance, etc. Back in May, the service went to a curbside pickup service as well as online access, archives, etc. That still exists even with the furloughs. So the service being provided to the residents is not going to stop. I'll be the first to tell you the emotional toll of furloughing people is extremely heavy. It's not something I want to do at all. But again, we're in a situation where there's a budget deficit, and when the finances get back right, we'll be able to bring not just them back, but think about all the culture and arts departments. It wasn't just our libraries. It was our Museum of Art. It was the Boutwell. It was the Arlington House. It was the Schloss Furnace Museum. It was the Southern Flight Museum, and many other of our cultural assets that receive some type of pain point related to furloughs.
So going back to the budget for a moment, what were some things, and I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but I know this is a thing you're passionate about. You was able to still dedicate funding for neighborhoods.
Yeah, listen, the priority has always been neighborhood revitalization.
Okay.
A lot of neighborhood revitalization is rooted in infrastructure, but it's also rooted in removing blight. We have gotten to a point where we're still steady of removing blighted structures that have been abandoned and that residents have been complaining about 5, 6, 7 years. Still in the budget. We're still able to pave streets in the budget. We're still able to do weed abatement in the budget. The infrastructure things that the city is responsible for and investing in neighborhood revitalization, we're still able to accomplish that in this budget.
Okay, so, besides increasing the revenue, which, a lot of people not going to increase taxes, what are your other plans for, I know you talked about earlier about selling different assets and things like that. What are your other plans for trying to increase revenue, trying to close that hole?
So listen, when you got a funding gap, it's no different than your home. If you got bills to pay, your first option is to go get a second job so you can bring in more money. Your second option is to cut expenses. In our world, getting a second job is equivalent to raising taxes. We're not in a position to raise taxes at this point, which means we have to cut taxes. The only other thing we can do at this point is sell off city assets. So think about buildings we own, we don't use. Consider just city assets that are a property that we can sell. I think that's one of the most creative things we can do right now. We should be looking heavy into that.
So did the city receive any funding from the federal government as far as like doing this COVID-19 to kind of assist to plug the hole?
No, so the federal government was very explicit, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I think the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue wants to be at war with cities. It's explicit in the CARES funding that cities cannot use funding to plug or offset their budget deficits or holes that they have. They can only use it to reimburse expenses already spent out related to public safety.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we had public safety related expenses. Yes, we had PPE expenses, but that money is to reimburse money we've already spent out. It can't go to plug a hole because the federal government is intentionally not allowing cities to do that. They've allowed it for banks. They've allowed it for airlines. Hell, they've even allowed it for public transit, including the Birmingham Jefferson County Transit Authority that got $21 million. Cities didn't get direct funding to plug our shortfalls.
All right, so
do you know what's happening in Birmingham? Find out now with the all-new What's Happening Birmingham app. Download today on Android, iPhone, and iPad for free. Get info on everything you need to know about local news, events, businesses, restaurants, and more. Visit our website, what'shappeningbirmingham.com, follow us on Twitter at HappeningBham, or call us at 205-538-4508. Download the What's Happening Birmingham app today. What's Happening Birmingham, your source for everything Birmingham.